I don't know why I'm writing this. Maybe I just need to get it off my chest before I lose my mind. Maybe it's some twisted form of therapy, or maybe I just need someone to know what happened before they find me. I never thought I'd end up in this situation. I was just a regular guy, 27 years old, working a dead-end IT job for a shitty contracting company that barely paid enough to cover my bills. My social life was basically non-existent, just me, my PlayStation, and the occasional mindless scroll through Reddit or Twitter before passing out in my tiny Chicago apartment. Then about 6 months ago, I fell down the dark web rabbit hole. It started as a joke. I was drunk one night scrolling through YouTube conspiracy videos when I came across one about hidden cults operating in plain sight. You know the kind? Some guy with a distorted voice rambling about secret societies, human sacrifices, all that shit. Normally, I would have just rolled my eyes and moved on, but something about it stuck with me. Maybe it was the way the guy talked about real power, lying outside of government and religion, in ancient gods older than Christianity itself. I started digging. The first thing I learned was that the dark web isn't as exciting as people think. It's mostly scam sites, drug markets, and creepy porn. But if you dig deep enough, if you know the right keywords, you can find some really fucked up shit. And that's how I found the Children of Freya. At first, it looked like just another forum for weird neo-pagans, lots of talk about Norse mythology, rituals, and honoring the goddess. But the deeper I went, the weirder it got. There were long threads about the blood rite, about offerings and ascension through suffering. They talked about Freya not as some benevolent love goddess, but as something hungrier. And they weren't just talking about prayers or animal sacrifices, they were talking about people. I should have stopped there. I should have closed my laptop and gone back to wasting my life on Call of Duty, but I didn't. I was bored, I was lonely, and some fucked up part of me wanted to see how deep this rabbit hole went. That's when I met Elias. He messaged me directly after I made an anonymous post asking about the blood rite. His username was just E, and his profile picture was a black sun symbol. No bio, no previous posts, just the message. Curious minds are always welcome. Would you like to see? I don't know why I said yes. Maybe I thought it was just some LARPing bullshit. Maybe I wanted to feel like I was part of something bigger than myself. He sent me a link to a private server, black background, red text, no usernames, just symbols. The threads were nothing like what I'd seen before. They weren't discussions, they were ritual logs. There were photos, videos. Some just showed people in robes, gathered in candlelit basements, chanting in Old Norse. Others were worse, much worse. Grainy, low-light footage of things happening to people, naked bodies bound and gagged, their skin covered in deep, bloody carvings of runes. People being forced to eat raw meat, to drink things that looked too dark and thick to be wine. I wanted to believe it was fake, some elaborate horror ARG, but then I saw the live stream. It was a woman tied to an old wooden chair in what looked like an abandoned warehouse. The walls were covered in runes, smeared in something dark. The camera was shaky, held by someone breathing heavily. I could hear muffled sobs from the woman, her mouth gagged with cloth. Then Elias's voice, calm, almost gentle. "Are you ready to ascend?" The woman shook her head violently, tears streaming down her face. "Do not fight it. Freya accepts only those who embrace their fate." The camera moved closer, and that's when I saw the knife. I closed the stream, logged out, shut my laptop. But it was too late. The next day, I got a package, no return address, just a plain cardboard box sitting on my doorstep. Inside was a single object, a VHS tape. Who the fuck still uses VHS tapes? I don't even own a VCR, so I had to go digging through Craigslist to find one. I finally found some old guy in Evanston selling one for $20. Drove out, picked it up, brought it home, and stared at the tape for an hour before finally pressing play. It was the same woman from the live stream, only this time it wasn't just a few minutes of footage, it was everything. They had filmed the whole ritual, the prayers, the chanting, the cutting. They stripped her naked and painted her body with symbols in her own blood. She screamed, begged, until they finally cut out her tongue. Then they made her eat it. I threw up halfway through, but the worst part, at the very end, after they slit her throat and watched her bleed out, the camera turned. And I saw Elias's face, smiling, looking right at me. Then the screen went black, and words appeared in that same red text. "Welcome to the children of Freya, we see you." I ripped the tape out, smashed it against the wall, and spent the rest of the night drinking myself into a stupor. But when I woke up the next morning, hungover and panicked, my phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "You shouldn't have looked away." And then a picture of my apartment building. I packed a bag and ran. That was 2 weeks ago. I've been sleeping in motels, paying in cash, switching burner phones every few days. But no matter where I go, they find me. Every night I find something, a note under my door, a symbol drawn on the bathroom mirror, a whisper in the hallway when I know I'm alone. I don't know how much longer I can run. I don't know what they want from me. But I think I'm about to find out. I don't sleep anymore. Not really. Every time I close my eyes, I see her. The woman from the tape. The way her body twitched when they slit her throat. The way Elias looked into the camera like he knew I'd be watching. Like he knew exactly what I'd feel when I saw it. I haven't been home in weeks. I can't. If they found my apartment once, they'll find it again. I've been living out of motels, always paying in cash, always switching locations every 2 nights. I don't use my debit card. I don't log into my email. The only time I turn my phone on is to check for messages from numbers I don't recognize. And they always come. Sometimes it's just a single word. Run? Other times it's a photo of whatever shitty motel I'm staying at, taken from the parking lot. I keep moving, but it doesn't fucking matter. They always know where I am. I tried to go to the cops, I really did. Walked into a precinct off Western Avenue, straight to the front desk. Told them someone was following me, that I was being harassed, stalked. Left out the cult part because, let's be honest, who the fuck would believe that? The desk sergeant, a tired-looking guy with greying hair and a belly spilling over his belt, just sighed, barely looking up from his screen. "Got any proof?" Yeah, I had proof. The texts, the photos, the fucking VHS tape. But when I reached into my bag to grab it, it was gone. My stomach dropped. I knew I packed it. I fucking knew I packed it. But the bag was empty. I just stood there, my hands shaking. The sergeant sighed again, rubbed his eyes. "Listen, man, if you're feeling unsafe, file a report. But unless there's an immediate threat," I walked out before he could finish. It didn't matter, they had already cleaned up. I started thinking about hiring a private investigator. I spent 2 hours sitting in a McDonald's, Googling local PIs on a burner phone, reading reviews, looking for someone who seemed like they could handle something bigger than tracking cheating spouses, and that's when I saw it. A white van, parked across the street. It had been there since I sat down. The windows were tinted, but I could feel eyes on me, watching. I stood up too fast, knocking over my Coke. My hands were already shaking as I grabbed my bag, shoved the burner in my pocket, and pushed out the door. The van didn't move. I forced myself to act casual, walking past it, my fingers clenched around the pocket knife I'd started carrying. Just as I passed the driver's side window, I heard something. A whisper. Low, wet, and too close to my ear. "She waits for you." I spun, my heart jackhammering. But the van was empty, the doors locked, the whisper still ringing in my fucking ears. I got drunk that night, blackout drunk, some shitty dive bar in a part of Chicago I didn't recognize. I don't even remember getting there, just remember slamming whiskey shots like they were water, trying to drown the fucking panic clawing at my chest. Then I woke up in a different motel than the one I checked into. Not just a different motel, a different state, Indiana. I sat up too fast, the hangover making my stomach lurch. My mouth tasted like vomit. My clothes were still damp from something. Sweat? Blood? I didn't know. I didn't want to. There was a folded piece of paper on the nightstand. Stop running. I tore the place apart, looked for cameras, for trackers, for anything, but the only thing out of place was the key to the room. The tag was old school, one of those big plastic ones with the room number on it. 104. I turned it over, and my blood went cold. Carved into the plastic, deep enough to feel with my fingertips, was the symbol from the dark web server. The black sun. I had a plan, a stupid one. I was going to find Elias. He wasn't just some random cultist. He was high up, important. If I could get to him, if I could make him talk, I could find a way out of this, or at least die trying. So I went back to the dark web. I had to find another way in. The invite link I originally used was dead. Took me almost a week, digging through hidden forums, searching for mentions of the children of Freya. Finally, I found a guy. Some paranoid motherfucker who went by Yggdrasil's ghost. He posted a lot about the cult, about their practices. Claimed to have been one of them. I messaged him. Tell me about Elias. It took a full day before he responded. Are you insane? I need to find him. Another long pause, then, meet me. Tomorrow? Midnight, Ashwood Cemetery. I got there early. Ashwood Cemetery wasn't big, just a little patch of land outside Indianapolis. The kind of place people forget exists. Half the gravestones were cracked, names eroded by time and rain. I waited. My stomach felt like it was full of ice. At 12:15, I started thinking he wasn't coming, that I'd been played, that maybe I was standing in the exact spot where they wanted me to be. Then I saw him, thin, twitchy, wearing a dirty hoodie and jeans that looked 2 sizes too big. His eyes darted around the cemetery, never settling, like he expected something to crawl out of the ground. He saw me and beelined over. Are you fucking stupid? His voice was hoarse, frantic. Why the fuck would you try to find him? I told him everything about the texts, the tape, the van. His face just kept getting paler. When I finished, he let out a slow breath. You're already dead, he muttered. I grabbed his arm. Tell me how to stop it. His mouth opened, and then his head fucking exploded. The sound came a second later, a sharp crack in the silence. Blood and brain matter splattered across my face, my shirt. His body crumpled, twitching. I hit the ground. Sniper. I didn't think, just ran, sprinting through the cemetery, weaving between tombstones, waiting for the next shot to come. It didn't. I didn't stop until I was miles away, out of breath, lungs burning. Then my phone buzzed. A message. Run all you want. She waits for you. With an image attached. A grainy, low-light photo of me. Standing in that fucking cemetery. With the crosshairs on my head. I don't know how I'm still alive. I keep expecting to wake up with a knife in my throat. Or to open my eyes and see Elias standing over me, smiling that fucking smile from the tape. But every morning, I wake up in some different shithole motel, sweating through my clothes, heart racing, stomach full of acid. Every time I think about what happened in the cemetery, I start shaking. His head fucking exploded. 1 second he was talking, the next his brains were on my face. I still smell it sometimes, that sickly, metallic scent, mixed with whatever the fuck he ate last. I should have gone to the cops again. But what the fuck was I supposed to say? Hey, an internet cult just assassinated a guy in front of me because I was asking too many questions? No one was going to believe that. So I did the only thing I could. I ran. Again, I ditched my car, left it in a Walmart parking lot outside Indianapolis, with the keys still in the ignition. Maybe some junkie would take it. Maybe the cops would find it. Either way, I wasn't using it again. Bought a Greyhound ticket with cash. Picked a city at random, Detroit. I don't know why, just felt far enough. The whole ride I kept looking over my shoulder. Every time we stopped, I expected to see a white van. Every time someone got up to use the bathroom, I tensed, waiting for a blade to press against my ribs. No one came. But when I got off the bus, my phone buzzed. I almost didn't check it, almost just threw the thing into a sewer and kept walking, but I did. And when I saw the text, my hands went numb. Detroit, good choice. Attached was a photo of me sitting on the fucking bus. They were on it with me. I stopped sleeping after that. I know that sounds like bullshit, but I mean it. I stopped. Every time I closed my eyes, I felt like I was being watched. I holed up in a cheap-ass motel near 8 Mile. One of those places where the front desk guy doesn't ask questions as long as you pay in cash and don't leave blood on the sheets. I needed a fucking plan. I couldn't keep running. They were everywhere. So I started thinking like them. How do you find someone who doesn't want to be found? I still had my laptop, a shitty old Lenovo I kept for emergencies. I wiped the drive, bought a new VPN, and went digging. If Elias was as high up as I thought, there had to be something on him, some trace, some mention outside their little fucked-up cult forums. It took days, but I found him. His real name was Elias Brantley, 39, former anthropology professor at Northwestern, fired in 2017 after some incident the school refused to disclose. That was the first red flag. The second was an old blog, some deep web conspiracy page that hadn't been updated in years. Buried in a post from 2018 was a name I recognized immediately, the Children of Freya. The blogger, some guy named Ridley, claimed they were more than just a cult, that they had money, influence, that they operated in cells across the country connected by encrypted networks run by people in high places. And right in the middle of it, Elias fucking Brantley. I had a name, a past, a trail. But I didn't have long to celebrate because my motel door unlocked, not kicked open, not busted down, just unlocked, like someone had the key. I barely had time to react before it swung open and 3 men in black clothes stormed in. No masks, no guns, just knives. I lunged for my bag, where I kept my knife, my burner phone, my shit, but one of them was already on me. I fought. I fucking fought like an animal. I don't even know where I got the strength. Maybe it was the sheer fucking terror. Maybe it was knowing they weren't here to scare me anymore. They were here to end me. I grabbed the closest thing, a glass ashtray, and smashed it into the guy's face. He screamed, blood gushing from his forehead. The second guy lunged, but I was already moving. I slammed my knee into his stomach, sent him sprawling. The third? The third got me. The knife sank into my side. Hot pain. A deep, sickening pull as he twisted the blade. I gasped, choked, felt warmth spread down my stomach. Then I heard the gunshot. The guy holding the knife jerked, then collapsed. Another shot. The second guy went down. I barely had time to process what was happening before someone grabbed me, hoisted me up, and started dragging me out the door. I saw the first guy, the one I hit with the ashtray, running. Blood covering his face. He didn't even look back. Then we were outside, a black car idling at the curb. My rescuer threw open the passenger door, shoved me inside, and I finally got a good look at him. It was Ridley, the guy from the blog, the guy who knew about the Children of Freya. And before I could say a single fucking word, he slammed the gas, peeling out of the motel parking lot. His eyes flicked to me in the rear view. "You want to live?" he said. voice dead serious. Then shut the fuck up and hold on. I didn't argue. I just pressed my hand to my bleeding side and prayed that this wasn't just another nightmare. I was bleeding out in the front seat of a stranger's car, gripping my side like it would stop the pain from tearing through me. The stab wound was deep, and every bump in the road sent fresh waves of fire through my ribs. Ridley drove like a maniac, speeding through red lights, weaving between cars. He didn't say a word for the first few minutes, just kept checking the rearview mirror, gripping the wheel so tight his knuckles went white. I wanted to ask who the fuck he was, how he found me, why he saved me, but every time I opened my mouth, my head spun. We finally pulled off the main road and into a deserted gas station. Ridley killed the engine and turned to me. "Take your shirt off." I stared at him. "What?" "You're bleeding all over my fucking car. Take your shirt off." I was too weak to argue. I peeled the blood-soaked fabric off, wincing. My side was a mess. The stab wound was still oozing, skin torn and angry. Ridley popped the glove compartment, pulled out a first aid kit, and dumped a bottle of vodka over the wound. I screamed. "Shut up," he muttered, shoving a rag into my mouth. "You want them to find us?" I bit down hard as he started patching me up. His hands were fast, steady, like he'd done this before. By the time he was done, I was shaking. He leaned back in his seat, lighting a cigarette, eyes still on me. "You're either the dumbest motherfucker I've ever seen," he said, exhaling smoke through his nose, "or the unluckiest." I forced out a dry laugh. "A little bit of both." Ridley didn't trust me. That much was obvious. But for some reason, he didn't throw me out of the car either. He drove for hours. We crossed state lines. Indiana turned into Ohio. We stopped at another shitty motel off the highway, and he told me to stay put while he grabbed supplies. I didn't argue. I could barely move. When he came back, he tossed a burner phone onto the bed. "Call anyone and I kill you myself." He wasn't joking. I didn't sleep. I just laid there, staring at the ceiling, trying to piece together what the fuck was happening. I had so many questions, but I was afraid to ask. Then Ridley sat down at the table, cracked open a beer, and looked at me. "You want the truth?" I swallowed. "Yeah." He leaned forward. "The children of Freya, they're not just some dark web freaks playing make-believe. They're old. Older than you can imagine. And they don't just worship her." He took a sip. "They feed her." I felt my stomach twist. "Feed her?" Ridley nodded. "The blood rite. It's not just for show. It's not just some sick fantasy. They believe that pain, suffering, death, it all strengthens her." I thought about the tape, the woman, the way Elias spoke to her, like she was giving them a gift by dying. Ridley continued. "And here's the fun part. When you watch that live stream, when you opened that door, you became part of it." I felt sick. He leaned back, stretching. "They don't just kill people for fun, they kill them to bind them. Once you've seen the rite, once you've witnessed her being fed, you belong to them, to her." I shook my head. "That's bullshit." Ridley just smirked. "Is it?" He reached into his jacket and pulled out a folder, thick, stuffed with papers and photos. He tossed it onto the table. "Go ahead, take a look." I hesitated, but my hands moved on their own. I flipped it open, and my stomach dropped. Inside were photos of me, not just recent ones, old ones. Me as a teenager, me on my college campus, me at my fucking job. Some taken from far away, some close enough that I could see the goddamn pores on my face. I flipped through faster, my fingers shaking. There were more. Photos of other people, dozens, maybe hundreds. Some had their names written underneath in neat red ink. Most were crossed out. I stopped on one, a woman, dark hair, big eyes, smiling at the camera. The name under it, Abigail Ross. There was no red line through hers. "Who is this?" I asked. Ridley sighed. "She's like you, running. I swallowed hard. And the others? His jaw tightened. They didn't make it. I closed the folder, my heart hammering. So what do we do? Ridley smiled, but there was no humor in it. We burn this whole fucking thing to the ground. The next day, we went hunting. Ridley had a lead, a safe house the children used outside of Cleveland. He said it was where they kept their records, their recruitment lists. It was also where they brought people before the rite. I didn't want to know what that meant. We got there at night. A run-down house in the middle of nowhere, surrounded by trees, no lights, no cars. But it wasn't empty. We crept inside, Ridley leading the way, gun drawn. The place stank, rotting meat, blood, piss. Flies buzzed in the air. And then we found the basement. It was worse than I could have imagined. Chains on the walls, symbols carved into the floor, crusted with something dark. And in the corner, a body, or what was left of one. My stomach lurched. I turned away, gagging. Jesus Christ, Ridley muttered. Then we heard the footsteps, coming down the stairs. We barely had time to react before the first guy appeared. A huge motherfucker, bald, wearing a black sun pendant. Ridley shot him in the head before he could speak, but more were coming. So we ran. We barely made it out. By the time we hit the trees, there were at least 4 of them chasing us. I heard gunshots, saw branches explode around us. Ridley shoved something into my hands as we ran, a flash drive. "Everything's on there," he gasped. "Everything." Then he shoved me, hard, toward the road. "Go!" I turned back. "What about you?" Ridley smiled. "I'll hold them off." Then he turned, raised his gun and ran back toward them. I didn't see what happened next. I just ran. That was 3 days ago. I made it to New York, used the drive to log into a secure server. Ridley wasn't lying. Names, addresses, high-ranking members, proof. I leaked everything, dumped it all across the internet, sent it to every journalist, every cop, every fucking government agency I could. I don't know if it'll be enough, because they're still out there, and I know they're coming for me. Last night, I woke up in my motel room. The TV was on, even though I never turned it on, just static. Then a voice, her voice, whispering. "She waits for you." I ran to the door, locked, bolted, but when I turned back, there was something on the bed, a VHS tape, and a note. "You shouldn't have looked away.